Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, to our distinguished witnesses, thank you for your testimony today, for your service to our country. I associate myself with the remarks of Congresswoman Harman in commending the people, the brave young men and women, and not so young men and women who work with all of you every day to protect our country. We are grateful for their courage and their patriotism. I just want to throw out to the three of you some observations that I have for your comment. When we first went into this inquiry, and when we first, in the aftermath of 9/11, it appeared that the hijackers were people who came to the United States, lived in isolation, as the director has described, were not conspicuous, didn't break any laws, etc., and that at a certain moment a button was pushed, a message went out, and they went into operation. In the course of the hearings and our reading and the rest, it appears that maybe they weren't living lives of such isolation and that they might have received comfort and support, witting or unwitting, from some people in our country. A. B, especially from Director Tenet's testimony this morning, I would observe that when we ask the question, could this have been avoided, I'm becoming more discouraged about that as I hear more testimony, because it appears that if this wave of hijackers, for some reason or other, would have been apprehended, there may have been another tier to replace them. I don't necessarily mean a whole tier, just people to fill in different slots. And so that this was so well orchestrated that, and I don't want this to sound hopeless, but that they had people to fill in if somebody got more than a parking ticket, or we knew of the people who met in Southeast Asia, we knew of that meeting, and then we identified and somebody was on the watch list, that might have been a window on their activity that might have broken this, but it may not necessarily have prevented somebody from being in the wrong place at the wrong time in terms of the security of the American people. I just throw those observations out. Was there more here than meets the eye in terms of the support system for these hijackers? And I would just add a third observation, and that is I've always thought that the apprehension of Moussaoui and the timing of 9/11 may not have been the natural course of events, that Moussaoui's arrest may have triggered the hijackers into going into action. Now, when I've asked this question in the past in hearings, people say, oh, this hijacking was planned years in advance. It may well have been, but that still doesn't mean that the timing might not have been accelerated when the window on their activity was opened by the apprehension of Moussaoui. I put that out there for your comments. Thank you.
Well, I'll address the support within the United States. I think a critical distinction that you identified as witting versus unwitting. I do believe, and we have seen a number of instances, they were provided identification, some sort of support by persons they come in contact with the United States, but these are unwitting individuals. Some of them have been arrested and prosecuted for that support, for instance, providing identification to one or more of the hijackers. And so, yes, I think there were unwitting supporters within the United States, and that's an important distinction to recognize. As to whether or not, as to the issue of are there others out there who would have filled the holes had there been holes, I think the answer to that has to be yes. I mean, we all know that in the camps in Afghanistan, approximately 10,000 individuals went through the training and are now dispersed throughout the world. We also had at least 2 individuals who attempted to get in the United States who we know to have been individuals who were knowledgeable and we believe part of the plot, who were part of the cell in Hamburg, Germany, who tried to get in, but their visas were denied and they accordingly could not be on amongst the hijackers on September 11th. So, yes, there were many others out there that I believe, and I think George would have his own views, who would have been able to fill those slots should the need have arisen. As to the last point you make in terms of the whether or not the arrest of Moussaoui might have triggered the date or determined the date, I'll leave that up to George. One of the problems we have is I can't get too much into the events surrounding Mr. Moussaoui because he is facing trial in Virginia this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. Director.
Mr. Pelosi, I think with regard to your first points, the director, Bin al-Shib tried to get into the United States, visa denied, somebody else came in. Hazmi and Midhar took flight training, didn't do well at it. Hani Hanjar came in and became a pilot. On we go. With regard to Moussaoui, assuming I'm allowed to talk to Moussaoui, the one thing that I notice is 9 days after he's arrested, everybody starts buying their tickets. So, yes, these are well-planned, or 11 days. Yes, these are well-planned events, but they are determined by the operational security of the environment at the time. Now, why it happened that they started buying their tickets so soon after his arrest, I don't fully understand, but you have to pay attention to it. And so they react, and they're resilient, and they make decisions based on their own sense of operational security.
Thank you, Mr. Director. General, did you have any observation you would like to make?
No, ma'am. It's very hard for us to comment. The core of the question is so much domestic that we have very little to add.
Thank you, General. I just want to make one observation, Mr. Chairman, because I know my time is up. I direct all of us to page 20 of the Director Tenet's testimony, and on that page you are quoting the National Intelligence Estimate of 1995, and in it you say, our review of the evidence obtained thus far about the plot uncovered in Manila in early '95 suggests that the conspirators were guided in their selection of method and venue of attack by carefully studying security procedures in place in the region. If terrorists operating in this country are similarly methodical, they will identify serious vulnerabilities in the security system for domestic flights. I point that out because I think that in looking into the causes of 9/11 and assessing the performance of agencies with a responsibility to protect the American people from terrorist attacks, we focused very much on our intelligence community. But I do think that a statement of that kind points to broader areas of responsibility. And there's other statements in all of your testimony that speak to where we have exposure, they will exploit it. Again, on an earlier page in the testimony, a sign that our warnings were being heard both from our analysts and from our raw intelligence we disseminated was that the FAA issued 2 alerts to air carriers in the summer of 2001. I think that we will have an excellent product in our report of this committee. I think once again it points the need for an independent commission to review a broader range of agencies with a responsibility, because you can have the best intelligence gathering. You can all share the information. General, you can do whatever it is you do that you can't talk about, and you don't do it in this country. But,
Okay, good.
but the fact is there's a great deal else where we have exposure, and it seems that part of their modus operandi is to exploit the vulnerabilities, the security weaknesses that they may see. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I once again thank the gentlemen for their distinguished service and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Congresswoman.